The Future Trunks timeline in Dragon Ball Z is one filled with despair and darkness, with a small flame of hope shining through it all. But before the universe was destroyed, before Future Trunks defeated the androids, even before he turned into a Super Saiyan, there was a young man who sought that same destiny, Future Gohan, the son of the greatest warrior on Earth, who sadly passed away from the heart virus just before the attack of the androids. Thanks to the Dragon Ball Super manga, we've gotten a little bit of a glimpse of what it was like the day the Z Fighters perished in the future timeline. But there's still many gaps to fill. So today, we're going to explore what if we saw the day Future Gohan went Super Saiyan. Chi-Chi was left heartbroken, as not only had she lost her husband, but Gohan had started to spend less and less time at home, instead choosing to venture out towards Grandpa Gohan's home in order to understand his father and his journey. He knew he wanted to be like him, have the strength to surpass himself every day, but his father was a much different man than he is. His only choice was to go and continue training with Piccolo. Vegeta, on the other hand, had kept training and battling Kakarot up until his death, and even unlocked Super Saiyan right before his rival's passing. It was hollow for him, since, despite having this incredible power now, he had no one to test it against. This pent-up anger and energy left him pathless. He had no challenge left, no goal to overcome. He will never know how much more powerful Kakarot was than him. Krillin, Master Roshi, and the others recalled their old adventures with Goku, and how different their lives would have been without him. Thankfully, the world was at peace. At least for now, they could grieve. That was, until a few weeks later, on May 12th, at 10 AM, on an island 9 miles southwest of South City, 2 androids appeared. Piccolo could feel thousands of lives being lost and disappearing. Instantly, Kami contacted him. He told him that there seemed to be a pair of warriors attacking the city. Piccolo didn't really feel strongly about helping, at least not at first. He had maintained the idea that one day he would take over the world, but Gohan saw this all as a facade, especially without Goku around. Piccolo seemed to care a lot more about what the planet represented, rather than how he could take it over. Piccolo told Kami that he'd go find the Z Fighters and gather them together at that location, but Kami spoke up, something that sent chills down Piccolo's spine. These warriors were stronger than maybe even the Super Saiyan, as they are already making quick work of Vegeta. Earlier, Vegeta stood alone on top of Capsule Corp, his gaze fixed on the horizon where dark clouds gathered ominously. He wasn't sure why he was staying. Kakarot was dead. Why couldn't he just leave? He didn't have time to ponder any longer, as Bulma's voice cut through his thoughts. He rolled his eyes. There was always something bothering that woman, but what he saw was actually surprising. The news showed a city engulfed in flames, and 2 figures shrouded by darkness. Instantly, Vegeta realized that lives were being lost. Someone powerful was attacking. Yes, this was his purpose. Whoever this was could finally be a match for him. He quickly put on his gloves and turned around to leave, but Bulma implored him to wait for the Z Fighters. Vegeta ignored her until she brought up Trunks. The Saiyan Prince scoffed before bursting out of the building. Bulma could never read Vegeta, but she had a bad feeling about this. It seemed to her like she was slowly making progress with him, but every time she got close, he pulled away. Now she was afraid of what could come. Bulma looked at the time. It was just past 10. Gohan and Piccolo came by Tien, Yamcha, and Krillin on their way towards the island. They discussed a game plan. Though they were all unsure, it was clear that they couldn't sense whoever was attacking, and if they were already really giving Vegeta a hard time, then surely they stood no chance. They arrived at a cliff overlooking the island, engulfed in flames. They could sense Vegeta. Tien and Yamcha jumped down right away, but Krillin stopped and asked Piccolo if having Gohan around was a good idea. Even Piccolo wasn't sure, but he could see the determination in the kid's eyes. It was the look Goku had when he had his mind set on something. Piccolo tried to dissuade Gohan, but the kid insisted that this was his battle too. Krillin and Piccolo accepted with a grin. They would need as much help as possible. As the Z Fighters landed, Gohan looked around. The area was completely destroyed. The city clock tower laid on the ground, its hand stuck at 10 AM. The team jumped into the scene, trying to locate the androids. Between the smoke and the screams, it was hard to discern, but Vegeta's characteristic grunts led them the correct way. The smoke moved away to reveal the battered yet still fighting Vegeta in all his Super Saiyan glory. He stared down at the two young people, a man and a woman. They didn't seem impressive. How could they have done this to Vegeta? As soon as he saw the others, the prince smirked. It took them long enough. He almost claimed the whole glory for himself, not like he needed them. But the monsters didn't care that there were more of them. Yet Gohan was terrified. They looked like humans, regular people. He had fought aliens and monsters before, but never something so human. How were they so strong? The villains laughed. They would be able to have more fun after all. Piccolo zoomed their way, followed by the rest of the Z-Fighters. The battle that ensued was unlike any the Z-Fighters had ever experienced. The androids fought with a cold efficiency that sent chills down their spines. Gohan threw himself into the fray with as much bravery as he could muster, fueled by the memories of his father fighting. As the battle continued, it became painfully clear, however, that the Z-Fighters were outmatched. Tien with a solar flare brought them precious time, but he was quickly subdued by a devastating counterattack from the man. Yamcha, despite his agility with the Wolf Fang fist, fell next, attacked by the woman. But it was Krillin's fall that struck the deepest chord with Gohan. Krillin always fought as hard as he could. Despite not being able to match up with Piccolo, Vegeta, Goku, he was always there at the front lines, supporting his friends and his planet. His Destructo Disc was effortlessly dodged, and even when it returned, the androids easily evaded it as it cut down a building. The moment that followed was etched into Gohan's memory, the look of shock in Krillin's face as he realized the inevitable. Before being struck down, the two beings rose above him and fired their combined blasts at Krillin. The last thing he saw was Gohan watching in shock, as he could barely whisper Goku's name. Gohan was pained by this. He wanted to be like his father, but he failed to save his best friend. Gohan rushed to Krillin's side, tears streaming down his face as the realization set this was not like before. There was no coming back. Krillin had been revived by the Earth Dragon Balls before, but perhaps he could still save the rest. Piccolo, witnessing the despair in Gohan's eyes, fought with renewed fury. He had a responsibility not only to Gohan, but his father. His every attack was a testament to the bond he shared with both of them. As Gohan kneeled, cradling Krillin, Piccolo shielded him from a fatal blast, the impact of which threw both of them into the ground. With a pained voice, Piccolo ordered Gohan to flee, to find the Dragon Balls, to do whatever it took to make things right, to save the others. Gohan could tell from Piccolo that he didn't have long left. He needed to find Bulma. He needed the Dragon Balls.
Gohan!
What? But Mr. Piccolo?
There's no reason for you to die yet. Escape. Live to fight another day. You think Krillin and the others wanted to end like this? They died to protect you and the rest of the planet. Don't let their deaths be in vain. Find the Dragon Balls. Save the world. If Vegeta and I die, you will be the final warrior to defend Earth.
Gohan wanted to argue back, but a blast from 17 forced them apart as the young Saiyan sprinted away. Gohan was making his escape, but Android 18 attempted to pursue. But before she could move, Vegeta intervened. The Saiyan prince, battered and bruised, but burning with prideful rage, pulled her back. He finally had someone to fight using Super Saiyan. He wasn't going to let it go to waste. Gohan was able to escape thanks to Vegeta, as he even called him Kakarot's brat and told him to leave this to him. We'll be back with more after this.
Hello everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video thus far. If you like this sort of content and want to see more and support the channel, then consider becoming a Patreon. There, you can help support the channel through various tiers while getting some perks of your own. As a Patreon, you will help get the videos out faster, fun thumbnail art, editing, and even writing for videos. Plus, you get some neat perks like early access to videos such as this one and more. So be sure to go to patreon.com/SmugStick and consider supporting the channel. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
As Gohan navigated through the ruins of what once was a city, his mind raced with thoughts of the many what-ifs, could-haves, and if-onlys, and how he might still make things right. It was in this moment of desperation that Bulma found him, her ship descending through the smoke-filled sky, her voice breaking through.
Come with me if you want to live.
She had had a bad feeling about this and set out to gather the Dragon Balls as soon as Vegeta left, but something was wrong. The Dragon Balls were gathering together in one location already. They needed to stop whoever had them, and they had to do it fast, before Piccolo perished. They raced towards the location where the Dragon Balls were converging. As they arrived, their hearts sank at the sight before them. Shenron had already been summoned. The sky darkened as the dragon blasted out from a blinding light. They couldn't make out who it was that used them, but it was 3 figures. Gohan rushed out of the ship to try and make the wish any wish before it was too late. As it turned out, the Pilaf gang had seized the moment to make their wish for eternal youth. Unaware of the larger stakes at play, their wish was granted, their childhood restored, but the Dragon Balls didn't spread this time. They instead simply turned to stone and slammed against the ground. One landed right before Gohan, who stared at it. That's all he could do. Why didn't they leave? The boy fell to his knees as he tried to make sense of it, realizing that he couldn't feel Kami nor Piccolo's ki anymore. His master, his best friend, had been killed. Gohan's head was spinning. He felt like he couldn't breathe. Sparkles began to blitz around him, and without another word to Bulma, he blasted towards the battlefield. If there was any chance any of them were still alive, then he had to do something. He couldn't believe they were all gone. Bulma, likewise, ran towards her ship, though she did stumble upon 3 toddlers, being forced to bring them with her, to later give to authorities. The battlefield was a desolate place of smoldering craters. Gohan raced towards the site, his heart pounding against his chest. Electricity continued to crackle around him over and over again. Through the smoke, Gohan couldn't see any of his friends. All he could make out was an energy ball at the palm of the android's hand, glowing full of power in front of none other than Vegeta. The Saiyan Prince could barely keep his eyes open. To him, Gohan was a blur, but his arm rose, reaching out towards the boy. Gohan burst his aura open, rushing to him to save him, but he only heard his final words as Vegeta called out Kakarot's name. At that moment, to the proud warrior, Gohan looked like Goku. The monster turned as Vegeta's lifeless hand hit the pavement. That was it. Gohan was now the last remaining super warrior. He was left speechless. He had to do something. He had to conjure up the anger that fueled him within. Krillin and Vegeta had both called him by his father's name, and he had to live up to that legacy. And though electricity did spark up, it was like an engine that couldn't start up properly. He was in shock, but quickly snapped out of it as the woman punched him across the face. Gohan had to fight. He launched himself at androids 17 and 18, his attacks fueled by newfound strength. His blows landed with a force that surprised the androids. His speed and power a stark contrast to the boy they had underestimated. He was clearly more powerful than he let on, and his anger was rising, making him stronger, but it wasn't getting him to where he needed to be. In his mind, Gohan kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Vegeta, Krillin, they had seen his father in him. He had to try to be him. In a moment of strategic desperation, Gohan recalled one of his father's favorite techniques. Positioning himself at a distance, he began to gather energy. He had practiced it a few times after his father's passing, as the energy swirled around him, converging at the palm of his hands. The androids looked on in amusement. This was clearly incredibly powerful, but 17 wasn't about to let the attack hit its target. He rushed towards the kid, but in a moment that actually surprised 17, Gohan fired before he could reach him and launched his most incredible Kamehameha. The blast destroyed part of the city and it was even seen by people in neighboring islands. 17 spun quickly to hold off the blast as Gohan's tears flowed with the wind. The Kamehameha continued to push, representing a path Gohan hoped to carve for tomorrow. The dreams of those who have fallen, the hopes of those who will follow. The Kamehameha engulfed 17 in a blinding light as Gohan fell to his knees. At least one of them was gone. There was a brief moment of silence. You little punk. Gohan's breath was taken away. The man was completely fine. His clothes were tattered, but he was okay.
Just... what the hell are you?
Heh, you hear that, sis? I guess we haven't even introduced ourselves. What would the good doctor say about our manners? We are androids 17 and 18, creations of Dr. Gero, made to kill your father.
What?
But without him around, we're free to do as we please. Gohan didn't care anymore. as he once again kicked off towards the androids. Only this time, the two of them lifted their hands up, and in a moment Gohan could barely perceive, rained down a wave of energy that forced away not only Gohan, but smoke, debris, and the bodies scattered around. Nothing could have stopped this, but as the blast lessened, 18 realized that Gohan was still alive, even if barely. He was quite a resilient one. The two androids looked at the boy. At that moment, Gohan hoped his father would appear, just like against the Saiyans, just like on Namek. But his father wouldn't come this time. Gohan could barely hear his enemies as they discussed what to do, deciding to let him live. They wanted him alive as the final warrior, a plaything for their twisted sense of entertainment, a reminder of their superiority and his failure. They only wished they hadn't played so rough with the others.
Letting me live will be the worst mistake you'll ever make.
Android 17 smirked as he kneeled by Gohan, placing the tip of his weapon against his chin. I hope it is. 17 holstered his weapon and, along with 18, began to walk away, laughing and chatting as if nothing. Gohan mustered the last bit of his strength, stood up once more. He reached out towards the androids, though his vision was a blur. He took slow steps, promising to defeat these monsters. But in his delirium, he saw a vision, an apparition of his father. Before tripping, something got in his way. He toppled to the ground. With a groan, he tried to get up, opening his eyes one final time, only to be met by a horrific sight. He had tripped over Piccolo. The Namekian looked at peace, much like he had the first time Gohan watched him die. Gohan tried moving him to wake him up, asking for help. The boy then looked around to see the android's blast had carried the bodies of all the Z fighters towards him, and he was now surrounded by the cemetery of his old friends. He had failed them. Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, Vegeta, and Piccolo. He couldn't be his father. Gohan understood the true cost of all of this. It wasn't measured in the physical scars, but in the pain of those who survived, the shattered lives, the broken hearts that remained, with many more to come. In that moment, while kneeling by his master's body, while lightning struck in the background, Gohan's aura exploded into a golden one, his hair spiking up. The pain, the turmoil, the anger, it all came rushing in and crashing down all at once. Gohan had not only achieved Super Saiyan, but an incredible rage boost that had given him an unprecedented power like never before. A beacon of hope amidst the devastation. However, a heavy realization settled over him. Despite this incredible strength, Gohan found himself utterly alone in the desolate landscape. His heart sank as he looked up. The androids were gone. He couldn't see them. It wasn't the smoke. It wasn't the rain. These monsters, these man-made creations, couldn't be sensed. He didn't know what to do. It was a chill that fell down his spine. He knew, or at least hoped, he had the power to defeat them now, but they were nowhere to be found.
Androids! Come out! Face me!
He roared into the void, his voice echoing off the crumbling walls.
I can defeat you now!
But his challenge was met with silence. The androids were gone, leaving Gohan to confront the bitter truth of the situation. In his heart, he knew this power was what he needed to protect the world. The irony was cruel. When finally achieving the strength necessary, his enemies had disappeared, leaving him with no outlet for this rage, no way to change the outcome. The rain began to fall harder, mixing with his tears, as he continued to unleash his power in vain, blasting craters into the already ravaged city. Each explosion was a release of anger, a call for confrontation that would never come. A tragic spectacle of a warrior with no war left to fight. He tried to fly around, find the androids, but there was nowhere he could look. He was left in a daze, the world spinning around him, wasting precious energy. He was exhausted, and he had no option but to descend back down. A moment to defeat the androids had slipped through his fingers. All that anger was replaced with deep sadness. That was the peak of his strength, driven by raw emotion and the desire for vengeance, which seemed unattainable at that moment. It had always been his greatest weapon as a child, but now he had to grow up. He wasn't a child anymore. The boy laid by a rock and fell asleep. Later, Bulma landed as the flames died down. She was carrying Trunks in her arms as she found Gohan on the floor, unconscious but alive. She tried to shake him awake, but he could barely open his eyes and apologized. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Piccolo, Tenshinhan, Yamcha, Krillin, and Vegeta. She left Gohan and ran over to him. He was dead, tears flowing down her face as she put Trunks down by his father's body, holding the prince and crying on his chest. The promise of what they could have been, the love they could have had. She had begun to reach Vegeta. She knew that. Now she would never know him, not really. As Trunks tugged on Vegeta's hand, Gohan took weak steps to pick up the boy. He had to let Bulma grieve. Gohan looked at his friends scattered around. Piccolo knew this would happen, didn't he? That's why he told Gohan to leave and find the Dragon Balls, because he knew it was hopeless. No Dragon Balls, no way to find new Namek. Gohan was all that remained, but Bulma spoke up.
We can't just give up, right? That's not what they would want. That's not what your father would want.
What?
Defiance in the face of despair. It's all that we can do, right? Live. For them. For him.
Trunks pulled at Gohan's hair. It was like he was snapped back to reality for just a second. As he looked down at the smiling face of the boy, Gohan realized then that not everything was hopeless. He had a reason to keep fighting, because he couldn't allow Trunks to grow up in a hell like this. He couldn't allow him to feel the same anger, the same pain he felt that night. He promised himself that that boy wouldn't carry this burden. Even so, Trunks had fiery eyes just like Vegeta. If he had to fight, Gohan hoped it would be for himself. At the very least, he knew Gohan wasn't the last remaining super warrior after all.
Defiance in the face of despair, huh? In other words, we still have
Hope. It's all we have. All we need.
The trio had no option but to return home and bury their fallen friends. The news stations covered the attack, only to describe how androids had struck another town in order to just steal a car. The broader Earth was grieving, terrified at what was to come. Some whispered the name of an up-and-coming star named Mr. Satan, but Gohan knew none of them could stand up to the androids. It was up to him. That night, Gohan went to sleep back home. He kissed his mother goodnight, and later snuck out with his belongings. He couldn't face his mother again, not until he had rid the world of the androids. But before then, he just asked Bulma one thing, and she would deliver in a few hours. His plan was to live in the wilderness, just as he had during his training with Piccolo years and years ago. He wanted to get that spark back, and to understand Piccolo and his father. He would go on to search for the power he felt, promising himself to never allow anyone else to feel such anguish. Yet, deep down, he knew the hollowness of his quest. The anger he felt would never return to him. Without Piccolo, without his father, he didn't know how to move forward. He didn't know how to train by himself. He didn't know how to improve. His only way to get better would be to fight the androids, and that was a gamble between life and death. Perhaps this is the reason why Future Gohan was never able to do it, and in the end, did become like his father, because he passed on his legacy, trained Trunks, made him stronger, better, and was able to pass on the lessons he learned from his failures. But that night at Capsule Corp, Gohan quickly changed. It fit perfectly as he tied his belt before leaving, a gi just like his father's. Gohan realized how difficult it would be to live up to him, but he still needed him as guidance. He needed his father just as much as he needed Piccolo, Krillin, Vegeta, Trunks, everyone, but he couldn't be any of them. So instead, he had to grow alone, painting a kanji on his back, his very own Han. That was the beginning of a long and arduous training for Future Gohan. But of course, that's just my theory of how things could have been. I wanted to make this video and make it feel like it could really fit into the story of Dragon Ball, because we never really get to see why Future Gohan can't grow enough to defeat the androids. Obviously, it's partly because he doesn't know how to train, he doesn't have anybody to mentor him, but what if there was more? What if he did have a chance to defeat the androids, but they were gone? That's what makes Future Gohan really a tragic figure, because we know how he ends up. We know his destiny, and I think in the end, Gohan accepted that he couldn't be his father, that he had to be Gohan, and in this case, his role wasn't the one of the savior, but of a mentor to Trunks, much like Piccolo and Goku were for Gohan in the Cell arc. There's quite a clear reflection between Gohan and Trunks in that sense. Either way, I really hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was a lot of fun to make. Right now, the channel is in a weird spot with AdSense and monetization, so if you really enjoy and appreciate what I do, you can support the channel by becoming a Patreon. Patreons get audio of videos early, as well as sometimes videos themselves early. I even have a few exclusive videos on there for series that I'm not planning on putting out just yet or not finishing just yet. But don't worry if you can't or don't want to join, eventually the videos that I put on Patreon early will come to YouTube. As always, a huge thank you to the patrons and members of the channel you can see on screen right now, and until we meet again. See ya!